Great to see everybody. I think we might just give it one more minute. Apologies for those of you who have signed in, but there are still people joining, so we'll get underway in a minute or so. Well, I make it 2 minutes past 2. There are still people joining, but we can get underway. And I'm delighted that today we've got a podcast with Lightcast. Lightcast are a long-term supporter of the Institute of Economic Development. We've known them a very long time, and today we've got Elena Magrini, head of global research, joining us. They've recently published a report called Fault Lines, but it's all about the challenges that we all face with so many changes going on within the global labour market. And that's what we're here to talk about. The way we'll run today is we'll start in a moment or so and run through the slides, and then we'll open it up to questions. But as ever on these occasions, don't leave it to the end to ask the questions. Do feel free to be typing those in as we go along, and then I'll do my best to collate them and put those questions to Elena when we finish. So I'll hand over now to Elena.
Thanks, Nigel, and good to be here with you all. I can't see anybody, so I would just say it's good to be here with everyone. I'm going to try and share my screen. Nigel, give me a thumbs up if you see the screen. Okay, perfect. I won't be able to see the chat, so yes, if there's any question, I'll wait to hear from Nigel. But otherwise, I'm gonna give you an overview of this new report that we've published and why we think is important for this audience as well. For those of you who are not familiar with Lightcast, I'm going to start there and just give you a brief overview of who we are and why we do what we do. At Lightcast, we are a labor market analytics company, and our whole purpose of what we do is to create a labor market that works for everyone. For this reason, we work with organizations across the world that work either as directly with private companies, or we work with government entities and education providers to create new opportunities in the labor market. And depending on the audience that we work with, obviously the goal is slightly different, but the whole purpose is that to create a labor market that works for everyone. And we do this by building the most comprehensive data set on the labor market. The idea behind what we do is that the labor market is very complex and is changing in many different ways. And in order to understand all these changes, we need to get the most comprehensive picture possible on the labor market. And so we bring together government statistics, job postings, and professional profiles data to answer questions about the labor market. Doing so, we produce, alongside the data, we produce a lot of reports that look into some of the most pressing issues related to the labor market. Here you see a few of the past ones that are available on our website, but as Nigel mentioned earlier, what I want to talk about with you today specifically is the latest research that we've published this year, which we called Fault Lines. Now, if you're thinking about fault lines, and fault lines is very much a term that you relate to earthquakes, and you are scratching your head thinking, what on earth has this to do with labor markets? We're here to talk about labor markets. Well, let me start from there, and the reason why we call this report Fault Lines. Over the past 20 years of the work that we've been doing, we've seen labor market changing. We've seen labor market changing in many different ways, but we've never seen changes in the way that are happening right now. What we're seeing right now in the labor market is kind of unprecedented for a bunch of different reasons. First of all, because the amount of change that is happening all at the same time is unprecedented. There have never been so many changes all happening at the same time. Secondly, this change is unprecedented in terms of the pace in which it's happening. So there's a lot of changes and they're happening very fast. And third, these are not isolated shocks in different parts of the labor market, but they're all kind of like intersecting and interfering with one another. And at the intersections of these changes is where the real clarity lies in terms of understanding what is happening. And so we call this report fault lines because we see fault lines forming in the labor market, and we are really seeing the labor market being hit in all these different directions and seeing all these different cracks all at the same time. There are many things that are going on right now. We boil it down to three specific ones in the report. The first one is labor shortages. This one has been around for quite a while, especially for us European, UK based, compared to our colleagues on the other side of the pond in the US or in other parts of the world. But we were used to an era of abundant talent, where there was reliable economic growth, whereas what we are increasingly seeing today, and we're going to see more and more in the future, is actually smaller population and talent shortages. Alongside that, the last few years, say since the 2020s, have brought forward two other major shocks in the labor market. On one end, we have artificial intelligence, and the fact that technological development is happening at a new pace with which companies, but also education providers and policymakers can keep pace with. And we have geopolitical concerns. So we are used to live in an interconnected world that was optimized for efficiency. And this is, again, no longer the case. We are seeing restrictions, reshuffling, and the way countries interact with one another is changing. And this changes the macro picture, but it also affects how things are evolving on the ground at the local level as well. And so in this report, we try to look at the intersection between these different forces and try to highlight some of the biggest changes that are happening in the labor market right now. There are a lot of charts in the report, and for each of the specific chapters, there are a lot of different insights. But what I wanted to do here with this group today was to focus on the intersections, what's happening in the intersections, and then from there look at the UK specific point of view and implications for local government and local development. So starting from the intersection between these different fault lines and what does that tell us? As I said, none of these shocks is happening in isolation in the labor market, but rather they're all happening on top of one another. And the problem or the opportunity lies in the way that these shocks are interacting with one another. One of the ones that jumps to mind to me, especially as someone who spends a lot of time thinking and working, trying to understand the impact of AI on the labor market, is that when you're thinking about AI and the labor market, one of the things that we see often in the headlines is that jobs will be taken over by AI. Setting aside the scaremongering that there is behind a lot of these headlines, this in isolation looks scary. But if we look at that combined with what we know about labor shortages and the fact that there will be fewer people entering the labor market than those that are exiting the labor market, well, actually AI could actually be an opportunity for us. But so far, we're not seeing that opportunity realizing, but we're seeing labor shortages and AI affecting two different parts of the labor market. Another area where there could be an overlap between these different fault lines is around labor shortages with geopolitics. So we already know that there are talent shortages in many parts of the world, and geopolitics is making these talent shortages harder for companies. Why am I saying that? Because tougher immigration policies, fewer movements of people from one country to another, restrictions in the way that we are trade with one another is making it more difficult for companies that are finding it hard to access talent elsewhere in the world where there may be an abundance of talent. AI and geopolitics is another point of intersection that is quite important. We know that every country is trying to race to become the new AI leader, and this is adding uncertainty to an already very uncertain geopolitical landscape. And we know that the countries that will emerge as the leader on AI will have more power in terms of geopolitics as well. So that matters. And lastly, geopolitics and labor shortages. There's another link between the two of them. Demographics drive economics. So when we're thinking about what's happening to the labor market, it's not just the companies are finding it harder to find talent, but if there are fewer people in the labor market, there are fewer people growing, the population is if the population is declining or in general, what happens is that there are also fewer customers. And so if there are fewer customers, then that affects the geopolitical powers across the world, and also affects how companies are making decisions, not just about talents, but also about the markets in which their goods and services are being consumed. So these are kind of like the four macro findings that we highlight as part of the research. But obviously, we look at it at the global level, and each part of the world is in a sort of different place, and each region in the world is on a different, has different challenges in relation to this. So I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into what is happening in the UK specifically, starting from the labor shortages. As I said, we've entered a world where talent is scarce. And in the report in particular, we highlight three different trends in relation to population's scarcity. The first one is that we have an aging population and declining fertility rates, which all in all means that there are more people that are leaving the labor market than people that are coming and entering into the labor market. And as you see here on the chart, this is something that's also visible at the UK level and across different regions. You can see that there has been population growth over the past 10 years, 2014, 2024. But if we're looking at the next 10 years ahead, that population is projected to still grow, but at a much slower pace right across the UK. In some places like the East Midlands or East of England, it's going to be still a little bit faster, and in some other places like Wales is really getting to near zero. We're talking about just 1% population growth projected over the next 10 years. On top of that, so that is the kind of like the stock of people that you have in your area. On top of that, what we're seeing is that there is falling immigration. So there is a smaller movement of people, from one place to the other. And this, in many countries, immigration has been a solution to declining population and declining fertility rates, because there were fewer people entering the labor market through demographics, but immigrants and immigration would keep the labor market afloat. And that, again, is not happening. We're seeing falling immigration rates. And thirdly, we're seeing that even when we have the physical bodies, forgive me the terms, but just to say, even when you find people, these people may not necessarily have the skills and the requirements that the companies are looking for. So it's not just that there's not enough talent. Talent is scarce, and the talent that we have is often mismatched with the job requirements that companies are requiring. And so in a world where talent is scarce, what really makes the difference is the skills and technology technologies that countries and companies and local areas have access to. Here on the slide, I don't know, yes, I do have the UK highlighted. Here, basically, what you see is that we plotted countries based on their workers' availability, so talent availability, and then their skills and technology capacity. So the more you are on the right, the more worker availability you have, the more you are towards the top part of the graph, the higher your skills and technology score. And as you see here, the UK sits in the top left quadrant, which is basically highlights that the worker availability score for the UK is lower than in other countries. So this talent scarcity really matters for the UK. However, compared to other countries, the UK is in the higher opportunity quadrant, meaning that theoretically speaking, it has skills and technology capacity in place to address many of these talent strategies. Obviously, this is a 2x2 in which we are comparing countries against one another. This is also saying us that the UK is in a better position than other countries in terms of skills and technology capacity, and in a worse position compared to other countries when it comes to workers' availability. So high risk, but also high opportunity. But when it comes to high opportunity, one of the biggest factors right now in terms of being able to reap this opportunity is getting the conversation around skills and talent right, in terms of ensuring that the companies have access to the people that have the right skills for the jobs that are being currently demanded by companies, and especially around AI. So far, we know that one of the only things that's clear about AI, or like not one of the only, but one trend that is very clear when it comes to AI right now, is that the demand for workers that have AI skills is really rising, and it's rising fast right across many different parts of the world, the UK included. And so being able to give companies the talent that has access to these AI skills will be very important in order to reap some of that skills and technological capacity. However, beyond that, when we're thinking about AI, we know that the distribution of AI growth actually varies quite significantly, both in terms of regions, and we do have a paper, we published it a couple of years ago, but we do have a paper, for example, that shows the variation by regions within different parts of the UK. It varies by countries, and it varies by sectors as well. And it's really important to understand these nuances, because it means that different areas will need different strategies when it comes to AI. But when we're thinking about AI in relation to education pipeline, skills pipeline, one of the other things that we have highlighted in this report is that the link between credential and AI jobs is broken. And what we mean by that is that a lot of the people that are doing AI jobs today did not study AI at all. And so then the question the question becomes, how do you make sure that there is still coherence in the pathways around the education pathways that get people into these new and emerging jobs, so that companies have the talent pipeline, access to the talent pipeline that they need to thrive in the economy. And from there, on the sectoral point of view, as I was saying now, the other thing that we need to keep in mind is that right now, AI investment is not going where it's needed the most. And this is creating a new challenge in the labor market on top of the existing one. So we're saying there are talent shortages in the UK. We're saying that potentially the UK is in a better position than other countries to absorb these talent shortages through skills and technological capacity. However, what we are seeing at the moment in many labor markets across the world is that the AI investment is not going to the sector that have the sharpest labor shortages, but rather is going in other parts of the labor market. So if you're thinking about healthcare, leisure and hospitality, retail trade, those are some of the sectors that have the biggest needs for workers and that will continue to have the biggest needs for workers in the next few years. And these are sectors that are barely touched at the moment by AI. In contrast, we have a sector like IT, where when we think about talent shortages, it's actually quite fine. Companies can find the workers that they need. But high AI adoption is highly disrupting the sector. And it's highly disrupting the sector both in terms of the skills needed. So companies can find people, but they may not necessarily find them with the right skills, keeping pace with the skill change. And even when they do, then they may face challenges in terms of exposure and transformation of these jobs. So this is one of the biggest challenges when it comes to being able to reap the benefits of the skills and technological adoption capacity of the UK. But as I was saying earlier, AI talent is different from all the talent that we are seeing in the labor market. When we look at what they've studied, only a small percentage of them studied something that is AI related. Part of this is kind of like due to the fact that AI wasn't a big thing a few years ago, and therefore there was no education related to it. But part of it is also signal to tell us that the link between education and jobs is kind of breaking, because these people are entering these jobs even without having the formal qualifications. But also at the same time, when we look at the demographics of people that work in AI jobs, what we see is that they tend to be younger, more highly educated, and disproportionately male, which means when we're thinking about upskilling and retraining in relation to AI, there are a couple of things that are very important. Younger people are more likely to have AI skills. It means that there are a lot of people that are already in the labor market. They may be 35 plus that don't have skills related to AI, and they will need retraining and upskilling. And that also that there could be a gender dynamic in relation to AI, and how, again, tapping into new areas of opportunities in terms of upskilling and retraining. A lot of things are changing in the labor market right now, but while the ground is shifting, there is one thing that it seems to stay pretty stable in terms of education and training, which is that even in AI jobs, so these are jobs that require AI skills, the top 10 skills that are most frequently mentioned are not just AI skills. So of the top 10, only 2 of the skills most requested are AI related skills. The other 8 are actually deeply human skills. It's about communication, about management, leadership, research, operations, problem solving. These are skills that are still continue to be in demand pretty much across all type of AI jobs. And this highlights that even in a time of change, there are some things that continue to be stable and that we can use as signals about what can continue to be important also in the future. So what does this all mean for local government? A lot of these are macro changes, but they have an impact also at the regional and local level. And here I wanted to highlight three particular areas that could be of focus, especially in terms of thinking about the world of work changing at the local level and how to prepare for it. The first one is around local adaptability and positioning. And question here is around whether you're building or creating the right ecosystems for for ensuring future readiness in your area. So are you talking with the right stakeholders? Are you bringing together the businesses, the policy partners, designers as well as the education providers to create that local ecosystem that creates growth. Secondly, are you building training that meets the local needs? So do you have the right talent or the training pipeline to attract investment in your area? And here I'm not just talking about AI. AI is not the only thing that's happening right now in the labor market. It's about investment that can continue to promote growth in the area. And thirdly, unlocking labor market participation. So the question here is, how can you mitigate worker shortages by maximizing labor market participation? So we know of rising level of inactivity, we know of unemployment rates rising. How can we unlock these workers to meet some of the talent shortage, address some of the talent shortages from companies? This was my last slide, but before concluding, I just wanted to say we wrote this report because we saw things are changing in the labor market in a way that we have never seen before. We didn't write it to scare anybody. We actually wrote it with the idea of shedding light on these topics so that we can prepare for the change ahead. And so very much curious about what are some of the challenges that resonate most with you and how you're preparing for them. Thank you. You can access the report on our website, and this is the QR code for it. But Nigel, correct me if I'm wrong. We can share the slides afterward with the audience.
Yes, and we are recording as well. So anybody that did register in advance of this can get the recording of today's session. The ones that were unable to attend, and of course, I guess some offices are not entirely open today with the red weather warning. So yeah. No, but that, anyway. Thank you, Elena. That was, firstly, fascinating report. Secondly, really engaging in the way that you delivered it to us all. And I have barely been to a session in the last 6 months where somebody hasn't asked an AI-related question, particularly relating to the impact on the labour market. So I had 2 or 3 questions while people are thinking of their own questions to ask. And please, do put those in the Q&A or the chat. I can look at both of those. The first thing, Elena, is now that sort of migration has been politicized in so many areas of the world, and yet there is this need for talent and a demographic impact coming down the track. To what extent do you think we're seeing internationally remote workers in this space? Is that part of the solution, or is that not really happening? Is it just talked about? I didn't know if you had a view on that.
No, it's a really important part, and actually something that we considered including in the report, because especially in the height of the pandemic and immediately afterwards, we were seeing increased access to remote worker, not just for workers within a country, but also with countries with similar languages. I think here it depends. The UK, for example, is quite in a fortunate position that English is one of the most spoken languages across the world. And so you can draw from workers in many different countries. And there are a lot of countries where, like, for example, I'm thinking India immediately, but there are other countries as well. Nigeria is another one where there is a big population of English-speaking population that can take part in those jobs. Other parts of the world are not as fortunate. There are some concerns also around time zones, but again, Nigeria and UK, this is a good match in that sense. But the question, but there's a couple of questions here to consider. The first one is that geopolitics in the way that is shaping up right now is not just about reducing immigration, but reducing collaborations between countries. So this may make it harder for companies, even if they are interested in remote workers, into tapping into these remote workers. And secondly, there could be a challenge in relation to a lot of these countries are also growing in their own terms. They're seeing rapid economic growth. And so there might be an increased interest from these countries to actually retain their own workers for their own economic growth. So geopolitics is really changing the way, like it's changing all the pieces of the puzzles here.
Yeah, for sure. And I noticed on your chart about high levels of skills, but challenging numbers of people in the workforce. South Korea, which not too many South Korean speakers that I know, is really facing challenges. Maybe the most stark of anybody.
Yeah, indeed. And I mean, the UK is still at least in the upper, there is high risk, but high opportunity part of the chart. There are some other countries not too far from the UK. I'm thinking, for example, Southern Europe and Eastern Europe. They're in very much worse position than the UK as well, because they lack that skills and technological absorptive capacity.
Yeah. Good. Well, I mean, I've got a couple more, but we've actually had a question from the audience, and they take priority today. So we've got a question about. I suppose I could summarize it as being relatively rural locations versus city locations, and just this risk that with a focus on city regions and actually that concentration of higher education and critical mass of talent, do you think this is also going to be one of those issues that can disadvantage the less urban areas?
Absolutely. And this is something that we've already been seeing again in the last few years. When we're thinking about demographic trends, we have seen a movement towards cities and abandoning rural areas. And this creates problem, for example, in terms of running local services in local areas, for example, around healthcare or around schooling. And again, here, the UK has a few examples of other countries that are like farther down the journey here, like Greece or like Italy, where we're seeing biggest challenges. But then on the other end, and I have a background in economic development and urban economic development in particular, the role of cities in driving the overall economic development of a country is something that can potentially benefit, depending on how we address policies, also the surrounding areas.
Yeah, but I mean, it's sort of fascinating question, and we can carry on a little bit on that. In the 10 years ago, or maybe 15 years ago, you'd have thought the growth of online activity, the internet, ability to connect, actually might start to weaken the strength of cities and the fact that you could have a perfectly spatially distributed population. But it does just seem that the personal touch, the economies of agglomeration have led to the growth of cities, which I don't know that we'd have predicted.
Yeah, and it was funny because just after the pandemic, because of the remote working spike during the pandemic, we saw a different model, and we thought it might happen, at least like the spreading out of some of the benefits from the economic creation in cities, but this hasn't really materialized. And I mean, there is research about like how many days are people going back into the office nowadays, etc. But it's very much is gone back to be very city-centric economy.
Yeah, no, it really has. And then I know the main point of the report is that there are many things happening at once. But if we just took one of those things, and that's AI skills, I do recall, I guess, about 20, 25 years ago, when the internet was really breaking into commercial activity, we did have a similar spell where we had quite a lot of almost self-taught computer engineers rather than. I mean, do you just expect this to be just in terms of AI skills? You just think we're on a time lag here?
Yeah, I think actually you're very right when you're mentioning internet and like the development that we've seen around there, because this is not too dissimilar to what was happening there, and in a sense is not too dissimilar to other changes that we've seen in the labor market in the last few years. Even if you think about mobile phones and social medias, these are two other big changes that have happened in the last 10 years or so, well, maybe a little bit more than 10 years, but that have had a similar impact with people like learning as they were doing, etc. I guess the thing that is different right now, and maybe the thing that is more concerning for me, is just the speed of change. Because I think in the way that we're seeing the speed of it, the way AI is getting adopted is happening much faster than what has happened 20 years ago. And so the question is whether can we keep up with this pace?
Well, I can't even keep up with my inbox with the amount of notes that are now generated on AI from meetings I've attended that I'm supposed to review. It's becoming incredible. There was another slide in there, particularly about local government, and I, most people on this call will be involved in local government in one way or another. Is that linkage and interrelationship between the stakeholders, therefore mainly the employers, the training providers, and then the labour market itself, and the trends in that? And is there anywhere where you've seen that interface between those three really important groups work really well? It always seems to me a bit fractured in the UK, and the provision of training courses always lags quite a long way behind need because of just the way they're funded and the way they develop courses. Is there anywhere that does this really well, would you say?
Yeah, well, so that's an excellent question, because this is pretty much I've spent the last 10 years kind of grappling with this question, because it's something I'm very passionate about. Unfortunately, when I think about the UK, I'm not sure. I mean, there are some pockets, and I think some of the combined authorities mechanisms that are in place right now can help better bringing together these different stakeholders, kind of like the lab did, maybe still doing, etc. Not a completely fair answer. One place that's doing this well is Singapore, and I say it's not a completely fair answer because they're a city, but they're also a state, and I think their scale helps in terms of doing this well. But increasingly, we are seeing different parts of the world moving, for example, towards skills-based strategies and skills-based policymaking. And this helps improve the connection between the different stakeholders, the training providers and the companies at the local level.
Yeah, well, and Singapore, well, blimey, I mean, even during the Brexit debate and the discussion about the UK, whether we're going to become Singapore on Thames, I mean, Singapore is a slightly overused example, maybe, but it is interesting, and I've thought about this, but never really done any work on it. Is there an ideal scale where the information and the transmission of information from the labour market and from employers can impact on government policy in a way that the larger you get, the more difficult it is for that to happen? I mean, it's probably a completely unfair question because it's not really what you've been looking at, but what's your view on that?
I think that's actually a fascinating question that we should be looking more into, because I think there is a problem of scale when it comes to these things. It's hard to bring stakeholders together. Each of them has a different agenda. It's not clear to understand in which direction you need to go. So I don't know. I'd be curious to see more research on that.
Yeah, well, me too. I mean, I suppose a good example being the Irish economy, the Republic of Ireland, and organisations like the Industrial Development Agency of Ireland really growing a strong economy in a way that probably hasn't happened in certainly Wales and maybe Scotland in the UK, but slightly different models of governance. So quite interesting. Well, I mean, interestingly, the number of people on the call actually had been going up while we were even asking questions. So maybe word got out that this was interesting and people should be watching. But there's been no more questions put in the chat. We know that people have got the recording to see. They've got the slides. They know where to go to for the report. So I just want to thank you, Elena, for coming along and having this discussion. I've certainly enjoyed it enormously. I know where to get some more data on this now when I need it, and we appreciate your continued support of the Institute of Economic Development. And for everybody else that's on the call, we do have a busy agenda of events all the way up to the summer break, and then some more planned for the autumn. Do look out for the conference. As some of you will have seen, we've got the Governor of the Bank of England speaking at our conference, as well as the Chief Exec of the Resolution Foundation and many, many others. So do keep a lookout for that and think about coming. It's on the 18th of November in London. But yeah, for today, thank you, Elena. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and we hope to see you again on an iED event another time soon.
Thank you, Nigel.
Yeah, thanks all.